"I'm Lucas Graham, and this company belongs to me." The packed room fell into utter silence. The silver-haired man in a worn janitor's uniform now stood at the center of the restaurant, like a storm that had just shed its disguise. All eyes turned toward him in stunned disbelief. Some were shocked. Some looked like they were about to cry. Derek, the store manager, turned pale, his hand tightening around his phone. He never imagined that the man he'd mocked, ordered to scrub toilets for days on end, was actually the owner behind it all. Lucas took a deep breath, his gaze unwavering. He had seen enough. The insults, the indifference, the burn on Marcus' wrist, the tremble in Haley's voice. And Franklin, the man who had given 10 years of his life to this place without ever being recognized. He came here to find out what had rotted his company from the inside. But what he discovered was far more painful. The very people he once trusted the most had betrayed the values he built this company on. And now the truth was out. If you've ever thought your boss could never understand what employees go through, if you've ever wished someone would have the courage to stand up and change the system, then this story is going to keep you glued to the screen. Don't forget to like the video if you believe in fair workplaces. Share this to spread the message far and wide, and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss more powerful, emotional, and inspiring stories like this one. Now let's begin the journey of the CEO who disguised himself as a janitor to rediscover the soul of his company. Lucas Graham was the man who built the fast food chain Grayson Bites from the ground up. From a small food stall in the suburbs, the business had grown into a network of 9 branches spread across the state. But lately he had begun to sense that something wasn't right. Sales remained steady, but the number of customer complaints had risen significantly. The employee turnover rate was also at an all-time high. Lucas called the regional managers to ask for an explanation, but all he got were the same tired excuses. Young people these days just don't want to work anymore. He didn't buy it. Lucas had always believed in treating employees like family. If they were quitting, something serious had to be going on. And so Lucas made a decision. He would investigate the matter himself. He had never met most of the employees at the branch level. In the past, he had trusted his store managers. Perhaps that was his mistake. To avoid being recognized, Lucas hired a professional makeup artist to make him look over 20 years older. Graying hair, a wrinkled face, and a slight limp. He wore worn-out clothes bought from a thrift shop, thick glasses, and applied for a janitor position at the Riverdale Central branch under a fake name, Henry Dawson. On his first day at work, Henry arrived right on time. The branch manager, a man named Derek Holt, gave him a quick, indifferent glance. "Custodian," Derek asked offhandedly as he flipped through a folder. "Supplies are at the end of the hall. Start with the restrooms. No greeting, no introduction. Just orders." Lucas nodded, lowered his head, and walked off, pushing the cleaning cart. He began working ears open as he cleaned. Within less than an hour, he saw the chaos in the store firsthand. The lunch shift had only 3 servers when clearly 6 were needed. A young cashier named Haley, with dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep, was constantly ringing up orders. In the kitchen, a cook named Marcus was sweating profusely as he struggled to manage all the orders alone. "Derek, we need more help in the kitchen," Haley called out. Derek, lounging at the counter with his legs crossed and a soda can in hand, replied indifferently, "Figure it out." Lucas gripped the handle of his mop tightly. That was the first clear sign something was very wrong. After finishing his first cleaning shift, Lucas stepped into the employee break room. He took a cold sandwich from the vending machine and sat alone at a table in the corner. Other employees came and went chatting, but no one paid him any attention until an older man walked in. He was another janitor around 50, carrying a paper bag with his lunch. The man scanned the room, then made his way over to Lucas' table. "Mind if I join you?" he asked in a deep, warm voice. Lucas nodded. "Go ahead." The man sat down, unwrapped his sandwich, and started eating. He glanced at Lucas's uniform. "New here." Lucas gave a small nod. "Today's my first day." Um, Franklin, the man said, extending a hand. Lucas shook it and nodded. I've worked here 10 years. Never seen you before. Which branch did you transfer from? Lucas hesitated, then gave a vague nod. Something like that. Franklin studied him for a moment, then chuckled. You're a quiet one. But that's fine. Just remember one thing. This place isn't what it used to be. It used to feel like family. Not anymore. That caught Lucas' attention. Why not? Franklin sighed. Management changed. They don't care anymore. The good people left. The ones who stayed, they're treated like machines. Derek, he only looks out for himself. Lucas frowned. Is it really that bad? Franklin nodded. Worse. But you'll see for yourself soon enough. Lucas didn't respond, but something was igniting inside him. He had once believed the company's work, culture was something to be proud of. If what Franklin was saying was true, then he had clearly lost touch with reality. After the brief lunch, the two sat in silence for a while. Then Franklin asked, Got kids? Lucas hesitated, then nodded. They're grown now. Franklin nodded back, as if understanding something unspoken. Families, everything he said, neatly folding his sandwich wrapper. Ever done this kind of work before? Lucas chose his words carefully. Not exactly, but I've been in the industry long enough to know when people aren't happy. Franklin rubbed his hands together and lowered his voice. I don't know who you are, but listen, keep your head down. Don't ask too many questions. If Derek thinks you're poking around, he'll make things difficult. Lucas didn't show any reaction on the outside, but he was taking in every word. Derek wasn't just lazy. He was creating a culture of fear. Employees were afraid to speak up, afraid to push back, which meant they didn't feel safe, which meant something deeper. Something more dangerous was festering beneath the surface. Don't ask too many questions. If you try to step over him, he'll make your life miserable. Franklin lowered his voice and glanced toward the break room door. Lucas didn't respond outwardly, but he mentally noted every word. Derek Holt wasn't just an incompetent manager. He was trapping employees in fear. They didn't dare speak up, didn't feel safe, and that meant Lucas had a serious problem to solve. The break room door suddenly swung open. Derek stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sweeping the room until they landed on Lucas and Franklin. Done with your little heart-to-heart old men, he sneered clearly. Aiming to humiliate trash is piling up out there. Move it, Grandpa. Franklin silently balled up his lunch bag, stood, gave Lucas a small nod, and walked out. Lucas gripped the handle of his mop, tightly forced himself to stay calm, and followed. The afternoon shift continued in chaos. Employees were working themselves to exhaustion, while customers kept complaining about the long wait times. And yet Derek, the one responsible for managing operations, stood near the counter, phone in hand, eyes glazed, offering no help at all. At one point, Haley, the young cashier, accidentally spilled a cup of soda as she tried to take payment and prep a drink at the same time. Liquid splashed across the counter and dripped down onto the floor. Clean it up, Derek barked, eyes still glued to his phone screen. Lucas didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, mop in hand. As he bent down to clean, he noticed Haley's hands trembling, even as she tried to fill a new cup. You okay? He asked gently. She nodded too quickly. Yeah, it's just been a long day. But Lucas knew it wasn't just a long day. That girl was overwhelmed, exhausted, and the saddest part, no one cared. A while later, Lucas found Franklin cleaning in the storage room at the back. He leaned against his mop and asked quietly, Tell me more about Derek. Franklin didn't look up. How do I put this? He does whatever he wants. Cuts our hours without warning, then yells when we can't. Keep up, treats us like garbage, and upper management. They either don't care or don't want to. Lucas clenched his jaw. Why do you stay? Franklin set his rag on the shelf and sighed. I've got a granddaughter. She's 9. My daughter's unemployed and I help out. I can't afford to quit. Lucas nodded responsibility. Po, fa. Those were the chains keeping people here, even as they were being treated unfairly. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the front of the store. Something had fallen. Lucas and Franklin immediately looked at each other and ran. Near the cashier counter, Marcus the cook was on the ground, clutching his wrist. Food trays were scattered around him. Derek stood over him, arms crossed, glaring. Get up, he ordered. Marcus tried to brace himself with his left hand and sit up, but he was clearly in pain. Haley knelt beside him, worried. I think he's hurt. Derek waved her off. Nonsense. He's just clumsy. Without thinking, Lucas stepped forward. He should sit down. Derek snapped his head around, eyes sharp as blades. Who asked you? Lucas didn't reply. He crouched beside Marcus. What happened? Marcus swallowed hard, his voice weak. I got burned earlier. Didn't say anything. Then I slipped. Just now, Lucas looked at the swollen, blistering wrist. A serious burn. He needs medical attention, Lucas said firmly. Derek rolled his eyes. He's not going anywhere. We're short-staffed. Lucas slowly stood and locked eyes with him. You're going to make an injured employee keep working. Derek smirked. You are hired to clean floors, not to give opinions. The atmosphere in the store grew tense. The employees paused, watching the confrontation. Lucas stood his ground, not breaking eye contact. Then Franklin stepped forward. Hez right. Marcus needs to rest. Derek sneered, about to snap back, when another voice chimed in from behind. If he doesn't get medical care, I'm calling Corporate Haley. Derek spun around, growling. What did you just say? She stood tall now, no longer the timid girl from earlier. You heard me. And in that instant, Lucas saw the most important thing of all, the moment Derek lost control. The whole store seemed to hold its breath. The staff fell silent, watching every move. Finally, Derek shrugged and said with disdain, Fine, go, but don't expect any special treatment when you come back. Marcus didn't wait for another word. He headed straight to the back break room, still clutching his injured wrist. Haley quietly followed behind. Derek turned to Lucas, a smirk curling at the edge of his mouth. Careful, old man. You are walking on thin ice. Lucas said nothing, but deep inside it was already clear to him Derek's time was running out. That night Lucas couldn't sleep. He lay on the bed in his hotel room, eyes staring at the ceiling, replaying everything he had witnessed. Haley's exhausted expression, the serious burn on Marcus' wrist, and Franklin's hunched figure still, carrying the weight of labor at an age when he should have been resting. And Derek, the one who was supposed to lead, was destroying everything. Lucas once dreamed that his company would be a place people wanted to stay, a community built on kindness and decency. But the reality was this. Grayson Bites' Riverdale Central branch had become just like any other toxic workplace. A place where people walked on eggshells, afraid, just trying to make it through the day. The next morning, Lucas arrived very early. The store was still mostly empty. The air filled with the faint scent of brewing coffee and frying oil. A few staff trickled in, groggy-faced, preparing for another long day. Franklin was already there, diligently wiping down tables in the dining area. Lucas walked over, picked up a cloth, and started helping. You don't have to, Franklin said quietly, glancing over. Just want to be useful, Lucas replied gently. Franklin said nothing more, just nodded. They worked in silence, until Franklin finally spoke. Derek's got his eye on you now. He's not the type to forget. Lucas gave a small nod. I know. After what happened yesterday, he's definitely not going to let it go. Sure enough. Derek's voice rang out from behind, sharp as a knife. Henry. In my office, Lucas put the cloth down and silently followed. The office was cramped and messy, cluttered with papers, an old computer, and a few unopened boxes. Derek stood in front of the desk, arms crossed, eyes fixed on Lucas. "Think you're clever, do you?" he asked coldly. Lucas didn't answer. "Only been here 2 days and already sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." Derek stepped closer. "I don't care where you used to work here. I'm the one in charge, not you." Lucas looked him straight in the eye. "I wasn't trying to undermine anyone. I just wanted to help," Derek scoffed. "Help you embarrassed me in front of my staff." Lucas kept his voice calm. Marcus was injured. He needed medical attention. Derek slammed his hand on the desk, voice tightening. "That's not your call to make." "It's mine." Lucas didn't back down. "And what if it got worse? What if he passed out in the kitchen? Then you wouldn't just lose face. You'd be legally responsible." Derek's eyes darkened. "You don't get it. This place stays afloat because I make the tough calls. If we stopped for every little thing, we'd never make it through a single shift." Lucas studied him. Derek truly believed what he was saying. He wasn't just lazy. He believed that cruelty was necessary. Lucas didn't argue further. He had seen enough. Derek grabbed the shift assignment sheet and shoved it into Lucas's hands. "You like helping, huh? Then clean the restrooms all day. Let's see how much of a hero you still want to be." Lucas took the sheet without a word. He understood what this was a test. Derek was trying to humiliate him to break the spirit of the uppity newbie. But Lucas wasn't easily broken. He had built an entire chain of restaurants from nothing. He had done every job to survive. A man like Derek couldn't shake him. All that morning, Lucas scrubbed and cleaned tirelessly, but his eyes were still watching. Haley, once again, struggled through the lunch rush alone. Marcus hadn't returned. Franklin moved slower than usual occasionally, rubbing his back as if dealing with a lingering pain. By midday, Lucas approached Haley while she was refilling soda at the self-serve station. "You holding up, okay?" He asked. Haley flinched slightly, then nodded. "I'm fine. Just a little tired." Lucas paused, then gently asked, "Why do you stay?" The young woman sighed. "I don't have a choice. I need the money. College isn't cheap." Lucas nodded, silent for a moment before asking, "If you could change one thing here, what would it be?" Haley glanced around as if afraid someone might overhear. Then she whispered, "Respect. I just want to be treated like a human being. We work so hard, but no one cares. People quit, and the rest of us just pick up the slack. And Derek, well, you've seen it yourself. He treats us like disposable tools." Her words left Lucas speechless. He now understood this wasn't just poor management. This was exploitation. And he knew he couldn't stay silent anymore. "Respect," Haley answered softly, her eyes scanning the room to make sure no one was listening. "No one here feels like they matter. We work ourselves to the bone, and no one cares. People quit, and no one notices. Derek treats us like garbage." Lucas felt a weight pressed down on his chest. He couldn't let this continue. He left the drink station and walked straight to the storage room. Franklin was dusting shelves. Lucas leaned in and asked quietly, "Got a minute?" Franklin wiped his hands on his apron and nodded. "What's going on?" Lucas looked at him, hesitant. "If someone from higher up truly listened, what would you say?" Franklin gave a faint chuckle and shook his head. "Too late now. Guys like Derek don't change, and the people up top, they probably haven't set foot in this place all year." Lucas held his gaze. "But what if they actually saw?" Franklin went quiet for a moment. Then he said clearly, "I'd tell them to clean out the trash before it spreads through the whole system. If they don't, this place is going to rot from the inside out." Lucas took a deep breath. It was time. He left the storage room and walked straight into the dining area during the lunch rush. Employees were moving about, busy handling orders. Derek was as usual standing by the register, scrolling through his phone. Lucas stopped in the middle of the dining area. He slowly removed his glasses, then took off the wig he'd worn for the past few days. The room went completely still. Derek looked up at first, only slightly puzzled, but then his face turned pale. Haley's mouth dropped open, and at the back of the room, Franklin dropped the rag he was holding. Lucas took a deep breath, then spoke clearly, his voice echoing through the space. Lucas Graham, and this company belongs to me. The air felt frozen. All the employees stood motionless, their eyes locked on the man they had assumed was just some elderly janitor. Now they realized they had been working beside the founder himself. Derek's grip tightened around his phone, his expression shifting from shock to hostility. Lucas let the silence stretch a moment longer, giving everyone time to absorb it. Then he turned directly to Derek, his voice firm and unwavering. I've spent the past few days seeing firsthand how this store operates when I'm not around, and what I've seen is unacceptable. Derek clenched his jaw, lips thin. This isn't the place to have this conversation. Lucas stepped forward, gaze unflinching. Nuth, this is exactly the place. Right in front of the people you've mistreated. Haley glanced at Franklin, her eyes a mix of confusion and hope. The other employees looked at one another, unsure what would come next. Derek tried to compose himself, forcing a laugh. Like it was nothing, I don't know what you think you saw. But managing a store isn't easy. We're understaffed. Kids these days are lazy. I do what's necessary to keep this place running. Lucas didn't break eye contact. That's your excuse. That's why Marcus had to keep working with a serious burn. Why Haley has to handle an entire shift alone. Why Franklin, who's been here for a decade, has to warn new employees to stay silent if they want to avoid retaliation. For the first time, the confidence in Derek's eyes wavered. He looked around and saw every employee watching him. He turned back, voice low and defensive. You don't understand what it's like here. You sit in your air-conditioned office while we're down here dealing with pressure every day. Lime stepped closer, voice low and steady. I understand more than you think. I've scrubbed floors, greeted customers, worked night shifts. Don't stand there and tell me I don't know what struggle looks like. Derek snapped back, voice sharp. You think you can just walk in here and judge what I do? You're not the one carrying this store day to day? Lucas' eyes darkened. Your job is to lead, to support your team, not to crush them. Derek opened his mouth to argue, but Lucas shook his head firmly. You're done here. Pack your things. Derek's face contorted a mix of shock and fury. You can't just fire me like that. Lucas didn't blink. I can, and I just did. The tension in the room broke like glass. Employees held their breath, eyes fixed on Derek, waiting to see what he'd do. He stood frozen for a moment. Then his shoulders tightened, eyes clouded with anger. Without another word, he shoved his phone into his pocket and slowly walked toward the back office. Lucas let out a long breath. Behind him, quiet murmurs began to rise. An old era had just come to an end. The faces in front of Lucas were a mixture of emotions, shock relief, and disbelief. They had never imagined this day would come, the day their real boss stood in the middle of the store, peeled off his disguise, and revealed the truth. It's not just about Derek. Lucas began, his voice steady and clear, carrying across the silent room. It's about all of you, about the way you've been treated, the conditions you've had to endure. That changes starting today. Haley blinked rapidly, as if trying to process his words. What do you mean? Lucas looked around the room, making eye contact with each person. I mean, from now on, you'll be treated with the respect you deserve. No more being overworked, no more being ignored, no more feeling invisible. Franklin, arms crossed, still cautious, asked, How do we know it won't go back to the way it was? Once you leave, Lucas nodded, acknowledging the very real concern. Because I'm not leaving this store the way I came in. I'm making changes starting today, starting with choosing leaders who actually care about their people. Haley hesitated. Like who? For the first time during the entire conversation, Lucas smiled. Franklin. The older man raised his eyebrows, visibly stunned. Me, Lucas nodded. You've been here for years. You know the people. You know what this place needs to be better. Franklin shook his head, still bewildered. I'm just a janitor. Lucas looked him straight in the eye, voice firm. No, you're a guide. All this time you've been quietly holding this place together. Now it's time you have the authority to actually make changes. The employees began to murmur among themselves, the mood shifting from uncertainty to cautious hope. Franklin rubbed his chin, thoughtful. Then he nodded, slowly but firmly. If it helps make this place better, I'm willing. Lucas turned to Haley. And you've stood strong through all the hardship. I want you to step up as well, to help lead. Haley's eyes widened. Me, Lucas nodded. You see the problems every day and you weren't afraid to speak up when it mattered. That's what this place needs. Leadership with courage and heart. Haley swallowed hard, her eyes starting to well up. I won't let you down. I know, Lucas replied. At that moment, Marcus returned to the store, his wrist carefully bandaged. He looked around at the group gathered with strange expressions. What happened? He asked, hesitant. Haley gave him a soft smile. Everything. Lucas turned back to the staff. From this moment on, things will be different. I'm not just changing this store. It'll be auditing every branch. No location will be allowed to operate the way this one did. The staff exchanged glances, still a little skeptical, but this time there was hope. Then one person clapped, then another, and then the whole room erupted in applause. It wasn't just applause for Derek's dismissal. It was recognition that they mattered, that they had been heard. Lucas looked around the room, a lightness rising in his chest. He had come here to find out what had gone wrong. Now he knew how to fix it. The applause gradually faded. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. The staff had seen the first spark of change, but trust couldn't be built in a single afternoon. He had made a promise. Now it was time to prove he would keep it. He walked to the back where Derek was packing his things in the office. The man was shoving papers into a worn leather briefcase, his hands trembling slightly with anger. Lucas leaned against the doorframe, watching for a moment before speaking. You had a choice. You could have done the right thing with kindness, but you chose the easy way for yourself and the hard way for everyone else. Derek didn't look up. Spare me the lecture. You think replacing me will fix everything? Good luck. They'll walk all over you the moment you start pampering them. Lucas crossed his arms. You never understood what leadership really is. It's not about control, it's about trust. And you lost that a long time ago. Derek let out a dry, bitter laugh. Trust doesn't keep a company running. Tough decisions do. Lucas studied him for a moment, voice calm but resolute. Tough decisions don't mean crushing people. You could build something strong, but you chose to be the problem. Derek slammed his briefcase shut and turned sharply. You're making a huge mistake. Lucas didn't blink. The only mistake I made was letting you run this place for too long. Derek packed his things in silence, then walked past Lucas without saying a word. The office door clicked shut behind him with a dry final thud, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Lucas sighed, then turned back toward the main area of the store. Employees still stood scattered throughout the room, some whispering to one another, others hesitating before returning to their posts. Lucas knew full well if he wanted real change. This was only the beginning. Firing Derek was the final solution. It was the opening signal for a deeper transformation. He approached Franklin, who was still visibly shaken by everything that had just happened. When their eyes met, Franklin spoke, his voice low. "You really meant what you said." Lucas nodded, every word. Franklin wiped his hands on his apron, his gaze distant, as if carefully weighing each thought. "If I take on this new responsibility, I have to do it right. Not just promises. People need to see real change." Lucas smiled. "That's exactly why I chose you." Franklin nodded slowly, stroking his chin. "First thing that needs fixing: wages. People can't keep giving their all when they're being stretched thin for a paycheck that barely covers the basics." Lucas had been thinking about that for a long time. "I'm reviewing compensation across the entire system. The changes will start here. No more shifts with just 2 people because we're too cheap to hire more staff." Haley, who had been listening nearby, stepped forward. "There's also the scheduling. We need a clear plan. Everyone's exhausted from the constant last-minute changes, and the shifts are always understaffed." Lucas turned to her. "If you had the power to change it, what would you do?" The young woman paused for a few seconds, then took a deep breath, her eyes full of determination. "Fix schedules. If someone needs time off, there should be a backup system in place. And we need cross-training so people can cover for each other. No more one person doing the job of 3. Lucas nodded. "Make a list of what you need to make that happen. I'll make sure you have the resources." Just then Marcus returned, his wrist still bandaged, his face tight with pain. He stepped up, having caught part of the conversation. "The kitchen equipment needs upgrading. Half the stuff's about to fall apart. We waste a ton of time just trying to make do with busted machines." Lucas nodded mentally, taking notes. "Send me a full list. Whatever needs replacing will be replaced. No more staff wasting time battling broken gear." The looks among the staff began to shift. There was still some skepticism, but now there was a spark of belief. This wasn't just another speech. Lucas was already taking action. Franklin crossed his arms, thoughtful. "What about the other stores? If it happened here, it's probably happening elsewhere." Lucas' eyes grew serious. "Am visiting every single location myself. I'm done relying on reports from people with their own agendas. I need to see it, hear it." Haley nodded in agreement. "That's the only way we'll know you're serious." Lucas turned to address everyone present. "This is just the beginning. I can fix everything overnight, but I promise, Grayson Bites will become the place I always dreamed it would be. A place people want to work, not one they're desperate to escape from." The atmosphere in the store shifted once again. Shoulders straightened. Whispers turned into real conversations. A spark of trust began to take root. Lucas turned to Franklin. "Are you ready to lead?" Franklin took a deep breath, then nodded. "Let's do it right." Lucas extended his hand. Franklin took it firmly. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time in years, Lucas was certain of one thing. The company he had built was finally finding its way back. Lucas Graham, and this company belongs to me." The packed room fell into utter silence. The silver-haired man in a worn janitor's uniform now stood at the center of the restaurant, like a storm that had just shed its disguise. All eyes turned toward him in stunned disbelief. Some were shocked, some looked like they were about to cry. Derek, the store manager, turned pale, his hand tightening around his phone. He never imagined that the man he'd mocked, ordered to scrub toilets for days on end, was actually the owner behind it all. Lucas took a deep breath, his gaze unwavering. He had seen enough. The insults, the indifference, the burn on Marcus' wrist, the tremble in Haley's voice. And Franklin, the man who had given 10 years of his life to this place, without ever being recognized. He came here to find out what had rotted his company from the inside, but what he discovered was far more painful. The very people he once trusted the most had betrayed the values he built this company on, and now the truth was out. If you've ever thought your boss could never understand what employees go through, if you've ever wished someone would have the courage to stand up and change the system, then this story is going to keep you glued to the screen. Don't forget to like the video if you believe in fair workplaces. Share this to spread the message far and wide, and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss more powerful, emotional, and inspiring stories like this one. Now let's begin the journey of the CEO who disguised himself as a janitor to rediscover the soul of his company.